Jorge. I might be a little too glamorous. I could audition for Morticia Adams' ginger cousin. Hey, dolls. Hi, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of Canada's Drag Race versus the World, Episode 4. And, well, I just need to say it. This was a shocking episode to watch. I laughed, not as much as I would have liked. I cried way more than I was prepared to. And I gagged at all the eleganza. And I mean that in the sexy way. Shut your face. But before we get started, I need to thank some Tipperdoos. Yes, I said some. Vito, my Tipperdoo boyfriend, is not alone this week. But that doesn't mean I don't love you any less, Vito. I'm serious. Mwah. Joining Vito on the Tipperdoo list this week is Troy Fegley from NYC, who was watching my last review while he was working from home, which I always feel is a euphemism for not wearing pants. Just me. Thanks for taking a break from watching all that porn, Troy. I see you. I know what's happening over there. I love you, doll. Seriously. I would also like to welcome a brand new princess to the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, where, if you didn't already know, we have 2 live chats a month. That's right, I said 2. Hello to Amanda Tamain, and welcome, doll. I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to join Amanda and the Fingerdoo family on Patreon, well, conveniently, I've got a link down below in the description box, along with a link for leaving a tip or two. Now, Jorge, drink me! Ooh, fancy. Oh, this is my Christmas present from David Vogelhut. Vogelhut. I'm going to say it the way you wrote it, David. Vogelhut, because apparently I've been saying it wrong, and I'm so sorry. What do you expect? I don't get out much. He sent me along this fabulous Elf cup from the movie Elf with Will Ferrell. And it came with a fabulous cappuccino mix, which I'm expecting from this whipped cream that Jorge has doctored up just a titchy touch. Wait. That Elf's from Ireland. No offense. There you go. Thank you, Jorge. Seriously. Okay, let's get started. Right off the hop, Silky and Victoria were congratulated for a fabulous lip sync, and Victoria revealed that she also picked Anita's lipstick. Both she and the Silk felt that the Wiggle had done as much as she could do, and it was just her time to go, much to Rita Baga's relief. I'm so serious. Victoria also pointed out what I noticed last week, that all the remaining queens had been in the top now, which was her lovely British way of saying, game on! Thankfully, Raja translated for the North Americans. I'm so glad she did. Sometimes those British. The next day in the workroom, Raja and Isis were feeling a certain way about not being in the top for last week's ball. But I will say, Raja was much more diplomatic about it. She said she was disappointed in herself for not doing better, while Isis more or less inferred that she should have been in the top, and to hell with the 2 that were. Am I the only one who got that? Thankfully, Brad Goreski arrived in the workroom in true Canadian fashion, in shorts. Now, I don't know when they actually filmed this. I think it was last spring, but personally, I didn't care what Brad was wearing because he brought the queens a mini challenge, thank goodness. And what a mini challenge it was. The queens would be creating personalized cameo-style video messages for some imaginary fans. So, with 20 minutes to get into influencer quick drag, the queens got to it. This was hilarious to watch. The queens got to read the synopsis of what said fan wanted them to say, and then they had to ad-lib the message. From what I've seen, most, if not all, these queens do cameos, so I thought this should be a breeze. I felt a wind. The queens not only had to say hi to whomever, but they also had to give some advice. One asked how to spice up things in the bedroom. Well, all the queens said fellatio would do it. My advice would be to have a hot curry takeaway in bed while watching a movie. It's pretty spicy. No. One asked how she could tell her girlfriend it was over due to some mysterious panties turning up. As this involved lesbians, Victoria Scone had a few choice words for the philanderer. I, on the other hand, was shocked because Mystery Panties was the name of my fringe play. The last one involved the Queens singing the national anthem. You know, I wanted to shade the international queens for not knowing "Oh Canada," especially the Americans, because, well, we're attached. But I have to say, there are quite a few Canadians who don't know it either. Isis, I'm looking at you. Seriously, thank God for the French Canadian. Not only did Rita know the melody, but she also knew the words in English. Bravo, Rita! Sérieusement. That's French. When the camcorders stopped recording, it was Raja who was the winner. And then Brad told them this week's Maxi Challenge was a comedy show. Yes, the queens would be performing a stand-up comedy routine of their own making. Well, that shut more than a few of them up. I'm so serious. As the winner of the mini challenge, Raja got to set the show's running order. It seemed like everyone was nervous about doing this challenge and wanted to get it over with by going first. So Raja gave that position to herself. The only two queens who didn't want to go first were Isis, who thought funny was funny no matter where you put it. I've heard that before. And Victoria Scone, who was the only one who wanted to go last. So, with all that information, Raja's running order was herself first, then Vanity Milan, then Rita Baga, then Isis, then Victoria Scone, and with Silky Nutmeg last. Speaking of butthurt, Miss Vicky seemed to be the only one who wasn't thrilled with that order. It sucks to be her, I'm just going to say. To help the queens with their routines, Brad had brought his TV producer, writer, and author husband along, Gary Janetti, who not only wrote for and produced a fair bit of Will and Grace, but wrote and produced Vicious for the BBC. Raja was definitely one of the queens who was nervous about doing this challenge, but she seemed a bit less so after her workshop with Brad and Gary. Vanity was bricking it because her roast challenge on her season of Drag Race UK didn't go well. In fact, it went up in flames. But Brad said she had been funnier than he'd been all season on Drag Race after her workshop. Rita had some good ideas, but it seemed like Gary had to lead her by the nose to get to the funny. But she got there. Isis surprised herself by doing pretty well during the stand-up challenge on her season of Canada's Drag Race, so, well, she wasn't too worried. Victoria was the wild card because, well, she hadn't lasted long enough on her season of Drag Race UK to do a comedy challenge. But her double entendre-heavy, pun-laden concept had promise, until she called it a full open clam. I guess that's as fishy as she likes her references to go. Silky's story about visiting Brooklyn Heights at her LA home was so funny that Gary and Brad were too busy laughing to give her any feedback. Not that she needed it. As the queens were getting ready to make with the funny, there was drama brewing with Isis in the workroom. She was obviously dealing with something. When the queens asked her about it, she said that she was done, that it was too much for her. She was so tired, she said, and felt she jumped back into the race too soon. So, with tears in her eyes, Isis removed herself from the competition. Gasp! This was such a shock and so disappointing. No one should put their mental health at risk for a competition, and I'm glad Isis recognized that and put herself first. I'm so sorry and disappointed to see her go, but I'm thrilled that we got to enjoy her work once again, even for such a short time. Raja said it all when she said Isis didn't owe us nothing. Well said, Raja, seriously. And with Silky leading the remaining queens in prayer, it was off to the runway where Brooklyn was heating things up in a stunning red sequin ballerina gown. Brad was looking stunning in a gray-toned ombre suit, as was Tracy Melchior in a midnight purple leopard print mandarin collar fantasy. And, fresh off mentoring the queens, Gary Janetti looking none the worse for wear. Bless. Up first, the Comedy Night for the World. That's the name they gave this show? They couldn't go with Global Guffaws? Oh, right. They couldn't use that because that was the name of my Fringe play. I have to say, this went better than I thought, but that doesn't mean it wasn't painful at times. Raja did a good job opening the show, but she felt like she was hosting instead of performing. I felt like she kept avoiding her jokes, which is too bad because when she actually got into them, she wasn't the worst. That honor fell on Vanity Milan, who started off well, and by that, I mean her first sentence went well, but then she immediately had to check her notes, which she'd put on the stool behind her. It went better when she actually picked up those notes and stopped turning away from the audience, but by then, the damage was done. Seriously. Rita did a bit better. Once she got through her ouverture français, her comparing French to English was hilarious. I said French opening in French. That's what I hope. Victoria's vagina monologue was so funny. Her callback to Silky's finger from last week was genius. I'm just saying. Speaking of Silky, as Raja predicted, she closed the show on a high note. Her calling out white people spices was hilarious. I love Basil. And then it was time for the runway. Category is Plaid Girls Club. Raja's Sherlock homegirl look was gorgeous, but then I'm a whore for a face kini. Fingerdoo for Miss O'Hara. Vanity Milan's ode to Clueless was beautiful. I'm not usually a fan of accentuated shoulders, but this suit was cute. I just wish she'd button the jacket closed to give that look a better shape. But still, Fingerdoo for Ms. Milan. I just loved Rita's plaid it girl. The color combo, the hat, the obligatory smoothie. It was definitely a Fingerdoo-worthy look from Ms. Baga, seriously. This was the second week in a row that Victoria Scone had me clutching pearls for her runway look. This David Byrne Talking Heads inspired oversized suit was stunning. I was so impressed by it, I couldn't give it a Fingerdoo fast enough. Well done, Miss Scone. Seriously. I have to say I was slightly disappointed by Silky's plaid look. It was more of a biker look, if you ask me. She covered up all that plaid with a leather jacket. Still, she looked good, so I gave her a Fingerdoo. After the judges' critiques, it was announced that the top two queens were, once again, Silky and Victoria, but shock of shocks, it was Vanity and Raja who were in the bottom. This was an understandably emotional moment for all involved. Both the top queens had a fellow countryman in the bottom. Plus, it put Silky in the awkward position of kicking out one of her melanated sisters to the curb. It was Sophie's choice all over again. This was something Vanity played off of when it came time to plead her case. Her shared struggle with Silky and Raja was a huge factor in her plea, but then Victoria did admit that Raja had done better in the challenge. She's not lying. Raja stuck to the facts. This was her first time in the bottom, and she won that mini challenge. Needless to say, this was a difficult decision that neither Silky nor Victoria wanted to make. Back on the main stage, with their fingers held high, you heard me, the top two queens had to lip sync to the classic rock hit Your Daddy Don't Know by the legendary band Toronto. God, do you remember this band? Oh, I love this song so much. Both these queens gave it their all. I have to say, I was expecting one of them to throw the lip sync so they wouldn't have to pick a queen to go home, but they didn't. Silky had a reveal and pulled out her old trick of blocking Victoria from the judge's view, but Victoria was better prepared for it this time and not only got up in Silky's grill, but involved her in her performance, which ended up being iconic. So it was no surprise to me that it was Victoria Scone who won that lip sync. But what was a surprise was Brooklyn stopping her from revealing her lipstick. Due to Isis's self-elimination, there would be no more queens sashaying this week. Needless to say, everyone was relieved and thrilled beyond words. Seriously. What about you? Do you agree with who landed in the bottom? If someone did have to go home, who of those two would you have picked? I feel Vanity is the weaker queen, but Raja is the bigger threat. It all boils down to how you want to play this game. Next week is the acting challenge. This could be anyone's challenge to win, so we'll just have to tune in to Canada's Drag Race next week to see how it all plays out, and when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, before you go, please support my channel by giving this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribing to my channel if you haven't. And if you haven't, why not? What more do you want from me? Seriously. And don't be afraid to share this video with anyone you think is as big a Drag Race fan as we are. And if you'd like to support this channel even more, I have links to my Redbubble store, leaving a tip or do, and joining the Fingerdoo family on Patreon. Until next week, this is me. Seriously. I'm so sorry for Isis. God bless her. You know, I think people forget how hard something like that can be. Especially, I'm so glad she said she came back to it too soon. Because I feel like a lot of queens come back to it too soon. God, Victoria Scone, jeez. That's 2 outfits in a row that just knocked me out. I hope that Vanity Milan pulls it together, because Raja, I mean, the minute that it was Vanity and Raja, all I thought was, oh, that's too bad for Vanity. No offense to her. I think she's doing very well, but of the 2 queens, Raja's the strongest one, and it's just down to experience. She's been on 2 other versions of Drag Race now. This is her 3rd time. And every time she comes on Drag Race, she's better. And Vanity, I don't know if Vanity's doing better than she did on her season. There's more confidence for sure, but I don't know. I'm still feeling that she's having the same problems. I hope that there's another dance number for her to compete in, because that'll see her to the finale for sure. But I don't know if it's comedy and acting challenges the next 2. Oh, I don't know. She could go. I don't want to see anybody go at this point. I don't want to see anybody go at all, but, well, it would be a competition if they all stayed.